Hey gifted crafters, welcome back to my channel. On today's session, I'm going to show you how to make a Santa's hat using a Sentro 48-pin knitting machine. So stay tuned. Okay, so here are the materials you're going to need to get started on this project. Now, I'm using the Red Heart brand, and this is something you can pick up at your local Walmart or any Joann's or Michael's. Should also have it, any of your local craft stores. So I'm using the Red Heart by Yarnspirations, and the colors that I'm going to be using are white, and I'm also going to be using this cherry red yarn. And these two colors will be incorporated into the hat. Of course, you're going to need your Sentro 48-pin knitting machine. And with the machine, you should have received a tapestry needle, of which I'm going to be using on this project as well. So just gather all your materials and let's get started. So now what we're going to be doing is starting off with the cherry red color. And I'm going to go ahead and slip off the sleeve. And you're going to want to start off by just taking your yarn and doing about an arm's length. And that's what you'll be dropping into the center of your machine. So go ahead and just measure about an arm's length. You shouldn't need any more than that. This is just so that you can begin your cast on process. Now, when you're casting on, you're going to want to bring your Sentro machine over to the white pin. So go ahead and crank it until you see the white pin pop up. And here we are. So this will be my beginner point. So I'm going to go ahead and loop my yarn and loop it on to that white pin. And I'm going to just want to hold on to it gently. You're going to just have a little bit of tension on it, and you're going to begin to crank. As you crank, you're going to be weaving in through the pins on the front of the pin and the back of the pin. So as you can see here, I'll go ahead and drop it and wrap this around the back of the second pin. And then I wrap to the front and the back and so on and so forth. And I'll continue this motion all the way around until I get back to the white pin again. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back in a minute. Okay, now that you're back to where your white pin is starting, you're going to go ahead and put the rest of the yarn inside this little lever here. And then you're going to feed it into your tension guide. Now, I like to put it in the center hole, but it's really a matter of preference of how much tension you would like. Since we're using a number 4 yarn, we're going to go ahead and put it on the center one, because that should give it about the tension that we need in order to make the hat that we want to make. So for the yarn itself, you want to make sure that you give it a lot of slack, because you don't want the yarn to then tense up while you're cranking it on your machine, because this will kind of distort the stitches and give it a little bit of a different look, which we'd like our stitches to be consistent. So you always want to make sure you have enough slack when you're cranking. Best thing to do is to just drop it on the floor, or if you have a yarn bowl, you can go ahead and use that and just let the yarn flow freely. And what I like to do as well is to keep my hand on the actual yarn, just so I can feel it on my hand as it goes through the machine. And I can make sure that if there's any tension, I'll feel it on my hand before it actually hits the machine. And then I can just adjust accordingly. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to drop the yarn onto the floor. Just give it a little bit of extra slack here, and then just drop that down as well. Now I've got my hand just loosely wrapped around. I'm going to let the yarn just flow through my fingers. And what I'm going to do as I look into the machine, since I have now the yarn put into place, is you want to make sure that your needle now catches the yarn. And as you do at least the first round, you're going to want to go very slowly, just making sure that each needle catches the yarn as it goes around. So let's just do that. Now I completed one full round, so I'm going to go ahead and reset my counter to 0. Now I'm going to want to do about 65 rounds of the red yarn all the way around. So I'll go ahead and cast that on, and I'll do my 65 rounds and meet you back in a minute. So using this Sentro machine, you can also get your arm workout in. So go ahead and keep on cranking because we're almost there. Okay, we're coming on to the very last row, which is row number 65. When we're done with row number 65, we're going to introduce the white yarn and then do 70 rounds of the white. So let's see. We go pretty slow because I know that white needle is going to be popping up, and there it is. Okay. So I'll go ahead and remove the yarn from the tension guide and then pull it out. We're going to cut about half a length of your arm should be fine, and we'll go ahead and cut that yarn. Now what you're going to do is make sure that the yarn that you just cut is just drop it in on the inside of the Sentro, and then we're going to go ahead and take our white yarn and we'll introduce our white yarn into the knitting machine. Now you don't need too much of the white yarn. About half a length of your arm is just fine to start it off. Just drop it into the middle, and you're going to bring it into the little gauge here, and then I'll go ahead and put it on my tension guide. Again, I'm going to keep it on the middle guide. Just go ahead and give it some slack, and then just drop your yarn down to the floor, or if you have a yarn ball, just let it loosely, be on the floor so that it doesn't cause any tension. As you do that, you'll go ahead and keep cranking. Again, we're going to do 70 rounds of the white, and then we're going to meet you back here, and we should have a pretty long tube. Now, as your tube continues to expand, you will notice it'll start to hit the table. When it does, just go ahead and roll. Your knitting machine will go ahead and crank, and you'll notice that your yarn is already rolling. Just continue to roll it up so that it does not touch the table, because it could distort your tension as you're knitting the product. So go ahead and roll it up and continue cranking. Now you're going to want to go a little bit slow on the very first round that you're introducing the white yarn, because you want to make sure that your pins are catching the yarn. I'm not having any issues right now, as you can see, so I'm just going to keep cranking, just keeping my eye on those pins, making sure that it is catching the yarn. Once you've completed your first round, you can go a little faster, but you always want to keep your eye on the pins. Now we completed our first round of the white, so I'm going to go ahead and reset my gauge here just so I can keep track, and I'll know that when we've hit those 70 rounds. So go ahead and reset that if you haven't, and then after about 5 or so rows, we're going to go ahead and do a knot and just tie the red and the white yarns together. but we'll do a couple rows before we get to that. So let's just keep cranking. Okay, once you've gotten about 5 or 6 rows into the machine with the white yarn, you're going to want to take the 2 tails that you have on the inside, the white one and the red one. And we're going to go ahead and just tie a little knot, and just make sure that it's loose, a loose knot. You don't want to really cinch it too tight, because if you do a really tight knot, you're going to distort the stitches and you're going to notice that they're kind of shifting a little bit. So you want to just keep it very loose. And then some people just do one little tie. I like to just secure it again, but we're going to hide those stitches later on. So don't worry too much about it. Just secure it enough so that they stay together and keep the 2 tails inside, and then keep on cranking. Don't forget to ease the tension by making sure that you're giving yourself enough slack with the white yarn. So you definitely want to have that. Now I do it at a little section at the time, because you really don't want to have it all out completely, because it could tangle while you're trying to do the knitting, and you don't want that to happen. So you just give it a little bit of slack, pause, then continue to do your rounds, and then pause again and just give it more slack. I just found that that's the easiest way to do it. As you continue to crank, don't forget to roll up that yarn so it's not touching your table. So just pause and, adjust that as needed. Your arms are definitely getting a workout today, but don't worry, you'll feel great afterwards. Okay, we're at about 22 rows right now, so quite a few rows left to go. So just keep on cranking, put in your favorite CD, pop in some music, and just tune to the beat, and while you keep cranking. Keep on cranking. Okay, now we're coming up on the very last row. So this is going to be row number 70. So we are almost there. So let's go ahead and crank till we get to 70, and then I'm going to show you how to cast off. Okay, we are at 70 on our counter. So we'll go ahead and take the white thread off of the tension gauge, and I'm going to leave a pretty decent tail, maybe about 20 inches or so, and I'll go ahead and cut that with my scissors. And I'm going to remove it and just drop it inside. Now you'll see that my white yarn is in the front of the white needle, so I am pulling it towards the back, and I'm going to do one full round all the way around, and be very careful not to pass that white needle again, because then your stitches are just going to fall off. So we're just going to do one round, and as we get almost towards the center, we're going to stop right there, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so we are almost at the full round. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my needle that came with the Sentro machine. If you don't have this needle, you can use a tapestry needle. And if you have the one with the bent tip, that would work even better. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. And I'm going to grab the end of that yarn. And we're going to go ahead and thread the needle. So once you have this threaded, we're going to be ready for our cast off process. So let's slowly continue to crank until you see the white needle start to pop up. And there it is. So we're going to go ahead and you're going to want to catch this before it ends up dropping the stitch. So as you can see here, I am going to go ahead and get this stitch that is coming up. It's going to want to drop that stitch because there's no more yarn feeding into it. So we're going to pick it up before it drops, and you're going to continue to pick up all of the yarn all the way around, and you're going to thread that onto your needle. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's go ahead, crank a little bit further. And as you see the needle is up, I'm going to go ahead and catch this yarn, and I'm picking this up from the inside of the machine to the outside of the machine. So you'll go ahead and see that I've picked up that. I've got my needle inside this here, and I'm going to go ahead and thread that so that the stitch doesn't drop and it is now secure onto this yarn. And we're going to go ahead and continue to do that all the way around. So you can do this a couple of ways, one by one, just cranking each one. Or once you feel more comfortable, you can go ahead and pick up a couple of stitches and then crank after maybe about 3 or 4 pickups with your needle. So let's go ahead and do that. So go ahead and pick up right here again. And you may want to just crank a little bit just so it starts to pick it up, just to make sure you get all the threads of your yarn. So I've got that here, and now go ahead and thread that through. Now, you also might want to keep your finger on the next one that you're picking up, because you don't want that one to pop up before you had a chance to get it with your needle. So once you have these secured, you can go ahead and release it. I'm going to go ahead and release it from the white one. And you want to let that drop as soon as you get it off. Okay, and then you'll just want to pull on that a little bit and just continue to crank. Now I'll go ahead and grab the next one, and I'll keep going all the way around. Now, as you crank, just do it slowly and make sure that your yarn is on the inside of the machine so it doesn't pick it up again. And if you kind of just tug on what you have, you'll see that the yarn will then start to move out of the way. So let's just go around and pick up all the other stitches. Now, as you continue to go around, you're going to notice that your yarn is starting to detach itself from the machine, which is exactly what you want. So just do this very slowly. It just takes a little bit of patience, but soon you'll get all the way around and you'll have all of your yarn off of the machine and onto the yarn. Okay, so now we're down to the last 2 stitches that we have here. So we're going to pick that one up. And then we'll pick up the very last stitch. And your project will be completely off the machine. So now we're going to go ahead and put away our machine. And I'm going to show you the next step on building this hat because we're almost done. Okay, we're all done. We've got our arms all pumped up and ready to go. So now we're on the final stretch for this. So go ahead and take your needle off of your yarn, set that to the side, and you should have gotten one really long panel here, or tube, I should say. So here it is. Pull it out a little bit. Let's set the stitches. You're going to want to pull them on the sides. This just kind of helps to set it in place. I like to just pull that out here. And you'll notice here's that center where we joined the red and the white yarn together. So that looks really nice. You can flip this over. Now, what we're going to do is first we're going to turn this inside out. So we're going to want to see the inside here. And remember when we joined the 2 stitches together, here's where we cinched that together. So what I want to do now is just kind of hide the strips. So I'm going to separate the red and the white. And what we're going to do is with our needle, we're just going to work it through the yarn a little bit, and then we're going to snip it. So let's grab that needle again, thread it through. Okay, then I'm just going to pick up a couple of those stitches, just weave in and out. And you're going to want to do it in like a zigzag type of fashion. So we'll just weave one way, pull it. Make sure you pull that thread all the way through here. And then I'm just going to work the other way. Just picked up a couple of stitches, and I'm going to do one more going back the other way. Now you don't want to yank on it too much because you don't want to distort your stitch. So just kind of flatten it out here. And then what I'm going to do is just wrap it around one, pull it through, and then while I have the loop, I'm just going to put my needle through here and that'll just make the knot. I'll go ahead and take my needle off of the yarn. And there we go. Now I can go ahead and snip that off really close to the project. And so if you ever put this hat in the wash, you have a better feel for it not to unravel while it's being washed, because you did kind of secure it and you did that little zigzag stitch in between each of the little knots. That way it won't come off. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side with the white yarn. So I'll go ahead and thread that again. Okay. I'm going to go over to the white section. And I'll just pick up about 3 of them, weaving in and out. Okay, going back the other way, little zigzag motion there, and then back up again. Now again, I'm going to loop it through the same one again, creating that little loop, and then just putting my needle through it just so I can tie it in place. Okay, just go ahead and give that a little tug, and go ahead and snip that yarn close to the project. Okay, so now you can go ahead, and we're going to start one of the last steps here, which is cinching the sides. So if you can go ahead and get to the bottom, we're going to go ahead and start with the white one. And you have that yarn that you're going to pull. And when you pull it, you're going to notice it's going to start to cinch together. So go ahead and do that. Don't cinch it all the way. We're going to want to hold off for just a minute, but just cinch it enough to kind of get it in its shape. You'll see it starts to do a little star. And I'm going to just leave it right about there, and I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So again, just grab that yarn and go ahead and pull it, and you'll see how it starts to cinch together. Okay, and you see how it's starting to form that little hole, and it's starting to look a little bit like a star. Okay, what you're going to want to do is just leave just enough space so you can kind of stick your hand in there a little bit. And what I'm going to do is grab the other side. I'm going to go ahead and take this yarn and put it inside and grab it with my hand that's inside, and then just kind of pull that through. So you have your white yarn and your red yarn on the same side now. Let me just get that out of the way. Now you're going to want to grab the top of your hat. You see how my fingers are pulled on the other side, and you're going to want to grab that and kind of jiggle it a little bit until you have the white and the red top of the hat where you were cinching all the way over here. That's where you're going to have both sides together. So now what I'm going to do is back myself out a little bit. One thing I did forget is we're going to want to flip this around. So let's go ahead and flip this inside out. Okay. So let's try that again. Okay, so we have both hands inside. I'm going to reach in, grab that white thread, pull it inside, kind of grab the top with my hand and jiggle it a little bit so you get both ends on the same side. You can lay it flat, makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so you have your white thread and you have your red thread. And you're gonna be pulling that. First, we're gonna cinch the white one. Go ahead and cinch it all the way. And then you have the red one. You sometimes have to play with it a little bit. Sometimes it likes to roll up on you. So here we are. So now on the top, you have the white and you have the red. You've already cinched the white one as much as you can. And now we're gonna go ahead and do the red one as well. So we've completely cinched both sides together. So now what we're gonna do is tie the two together. And you'll notice now that your hat is going to have a little bit of the white on the bottom, which is exactly what we want. Because when we flip this over, you're gonna have your hat that's not going to show the brim of where the red and white yarn were met together. So let's go ahead to the top of the hat. We're gonna go ahead and cinch those together. So I'm gonna tie a little knot. And remember to cinch it as much as you can, and then go ahead and do the knot as tight as you can. And you might want to do this a couple of times just to have it really secured. Okay, now go ahead and grab your scissors and cut the string off as close as you can to the project. And you'll put that off to the side, and you have yourself a nice little hat. You want to stretch it out a little bit. Just kind of play with that here. And as you can see, your hat is completed. Now, what we can do is add a little pom-pom to this. So if you don't want to have the pom-pom, then your hat is complete and you're ready to go. But if you want to add a little pom-pom, I'll show you exactly what you need to get that done. Other than that, you've got yourself a nice little hat. Okay, so for those of you that want to add the pom-pom, these are a couple of steps that we'll have to do. So the first thing you're going to want to do is grab a piece of cardboard or a piece of cardstock paper, something that doesn't bend so much, because what we're going to be doing is wrapping the yarn several times around to create the pom-pom. So I'm going to grab my white yarn and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do next. Okay, so I'm going to unravel the white yarn just a little bit, give myself some slack. I'm going to take my little piece of cardboard. Now this cardboard is about 3.5 inches. That should be enough, because if you think about how big you want your pom-pom to be, your pom-pom is actually going to be half that size, because we're going to cinch it in the middle. So depending how big or small you want your pom-pom, and that should be enough for what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it a bunch of times here. Okay, I've wrapped it about 60 times around. So what I'm going to do now is slowly take this off the cardboard, and then we're going to cinch it. Okay, so I have my rows now, and I'm going to grab that piece of white yarn that we had from before. I'm going to just use that piece, put that down in the middle, and you're going to carefully put your yarn on top. Now I'll go ahead and cut off where we last finished. Okay, and then I'm going to try to center my yarn as much as possible, and I'm going to go ahead and tie a loop here. Try to keep it as centered as you can, and then just pull on it. And then you're going to want to turn it around and tie another loop. Try to keep it as tight as you can. And then I'll just turn it one more time and tie it just one more knot, just to keep it nice and secure. Okay, once I'm happy with that, what I'm going to do is now just cut off where all the loops are. So I'm going to grab my scissors and you're going to reach over to the loops. Try to get the very edge of the loops and go ahead and snip that open. Okay. Once you have it in place, what you can do is go ahead and trim it off any way you like. You have your little pom-pom, and now we're ready to just apply it. I'm going to trim off just a little bit more to give it that shape. And once you're happy with the shape, then you can go ahead and apply the pom-pom to the hat. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this pom in place, clean this up a little bit. And what we're going to be doing is putting the pom-pom on the top. And the way you're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and grab our little needle again. I'm going to thread one of the yarn threads in here, and I'm just going to poke it into that hole and put my hand on the other side and just try to get it in that center spot so you can feed it in here. And then I'll do the same thing with the other side. If you can get both of them in together, you can do it that way as well. And you're just going to feel for it here. So just on the inside, you can see here, I now have both of the white yarns coming through that middle section. So that now puts that pom-pom in place. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and tie a knot. Make sure that's nice and tight, doesn't go anywhere. And you might want to do this about 3 times. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and put it inside out. And what I would like to do is go ahead and do that zigzag motion inside of the hat, but I'm not going to go through both sides of the yarn. I'm only going to go through the white side of the yarn. So let's just grab our needle again. Go ahead and thread it. And then you're going to want to pull the white and the red to separate them. And with only going through the white yarn, we're just going to kind of go through a couple of stitches here. You can do that zigzag motion, whatever you're comfortable with. Just going to do a couple of stitches just to kind of get it in there. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing with the second piece of yarn. Again, just make sure that you are not going through the red yarn. You're only going through the white, because no one is going to see this piece. Okay, once you have that, go ahead and snip your yarn as close to the project as possible. And then we're gonna flip this hat inside out. Your pom-pom is now in place, so I'll go ahead and turn the brim, and there you go. You have your hat all set up. There you are. You're all ready for the holidays now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Thank you so much, and I hope to be crafting with you soon. Bye.